Good morning, delegates. Good morning, Mr. Nerukar, Mr. Sunil Kanmunjal, Rekha. It's interesting to have a session on leadership in times of high expectation. It seems for the last couple of thousands of years we have been discussing the same issues. What is leadership? How should we manage high expectations? As been encapsulated in this three-letter word, Dil Mange More, which is popularized by Captain Vikram Batra. You always have high expectations. If you conquer one peak, you want more peaks to be conquered. If you're having high growth rate, you want higher growth rate. We have the Chinese friends sitting here. We're getting depressed at 6.5% growth rate on a base of $10 trillion. When in the history of mankind did we have a 6.5% plus growth rate on a $10 trillion economy? And still we want more. And I think that's what drives us humans. And managing that becomes the challenge that we're looking at. Some of the things of the issues that we grapple with leadership also intertwines with leadership and with innovation. And I was looking at this batch that was given by this session. And typically I've had this problem that the batch flips, and therefore lots of innovations have gone into it and how to make sure the batch doesn't flip. And what I observed, what has happened is they have printed the same thing on both sides. And that's innovation, and that's leadership. Looking at a problem and finding out different ways of solving it. And that's thinking out of the box, and that's what we need when we are in a situation when we don't know what's going to happen next year, next quarter, next week. The situation that we are in is the expectations is that there will be high growth rate. We see that over the horizon that high growth rate is probably coming in. As Mr. Nerukar had mentioned, the commodity prices are low. But also what's happening is the global growth rates are low. Global demand is low. And the last count, the domestic economy is not really growing at the rate that is being expected, although there is high expectation that it will. And that high expectation is getting translated to our corporate pressures. So yesterday, the interest rates has been cut down. So on September 29th, interest rates are cut down. September 30, the H1 results are to be out. And are we saying there'll be more growth happening in September 30 because on September 29, the interest rates have gone down? How many of you are expecting a very good H1? Can I have some show of hands in terms of how many of you are expecting a high growth rate in H1? Quite a few. And that's a green shoots coming up. I'm surprised you raised the hand because there's supposed to be a silent period, but could you raise your hand? But what keeps happening is that we say the green shoots are coming. For last couple of years, we have been saying the green shoots are coming up. But we don't see the green shoots translating into flowering bamboos. And the expectation is that we'll have tropical forests on a desert land. And therefore, that's the gap between the expectations and what's really happening on the ground. And every quarter, we see the green shoots, and we see some of the hands going up. I would roughly say about 10% of the hands went up. And that's great. When we again come back and look at the Indian scenario, of course we are growing, and we have been very happy that we have grown in this year we'll be growing faster than our friends from across the border. But the sobering thought is that even at a lower growth rate, the actual growth added by China is 5 times the growth added by India. So who are the stakeholders when we look at growth? We have stakeholders as our shareholders who want a far higher price or a far higher return. We have our customers. We also have our vendors and responsibility to the vendors because we have promised a higher growth rates which will increase their sales. We also got citizens as our stakeholders. But if you look at the inheritance that we have had, manufacturing has still been less than 12.89% of the economy. And without that going up, we can't be having jobs, we can't be having a higher bottom line, we can't be having profits, we can't discharge to the expectations that have been built up. And on top of it, we've got the march of technology coming in where we foresee a large amount of job destruction to happen. And we have seen that the government has taken up very innovative steps in trying to check the job destruction, in trying to create more jobs, and in trying to bring in some semblance of rationality to the economy by increasing the share of manufacturing. And we're glad to note that the government has come out with programs such as Make in India, Digital India, Skill India, and they're so interlinked. If we don't have a skilled India, we can't manufacture anything. And if we manufacture something, it has to be consumed. And programs like Digital India ensure that the consumption happens because of the drumbeat that the government is putting in. A few years ago, I would say about just 2 years ago, in fact, India was almost a joke in BRICS. And people were saying, let's replace India with Indonesia and BRICS. Now it seems that India is a pillar of BRICS. I think that's the leadership that we have seen coming in the government as an organization. I think that's a good learning for all of us who run our own individual organizations on how to go beyond the constraints and the problems and come out with the drumbeats and the leadership that is needed to bring in the transformation. And beyond that, when we look at the brass tacks, it's not just the visioning at the top, but when we look at brass tacks, we see multiple risks that are there in large projects. And in fact, if I look at the Honorable Minister's own ministry, many projects have been stuck because of rating risks, because of revenue risk, because we don't know whether revenue will come out in terms of what has been expected. There have been partial completion risks. We don't know whether the project that has started will complete or not, and therefore the interest component of debt will start going up, and it will make the project stretched out because whoever is invested has to bring in more money just to service the interest component. And very deftly, the ministry under the able leadership of the Honorable Minister has been able to come out with instruments such as hybrid PPP, partial risk completion guarantee, and so on and so forth, to overcome these challenges. And therefore, leadership is not just at the theoretical level, but also changing it and bringing it down to addressing the tactical issues. One of the views of leadership is very well encapsulated in this picture of Vishnu lying on the snake, the Sheshnag, and Brahma covering behind Vishnu, looking at the universe, and able to make sense of the universe only through the eyes of Maya. So what Brahma is able to do is stay in his comfort level, interpret the universe in terms of what Maya is able to show to Brahma. And I guess many a times we get in the same trap, where we are able to see the organization and the issues and the problems in terms of our existing constraints, our existing frameworks, and we only see a small portion of the universe, instead of going ahead and creating our own universes. And we have seen that happening in e-commerce, we have seen that happening in many other sectors, where segments that did not exist was created because someone saw behind and beyond the constraints and the frameworks that have been dictated to us. And that is leadership, and that's what we are seeing happening now. And when we create these new universes, that's when the organizations grow, that's when the economies grow. If we take a couple of more examples, and I think the minister is already here, so I'll make it really short. If you look at the Gandhi's Dandi March, did Mahatma Gandhi really know what will happen at the end of the march? Did he really know he'll complete the march? Did he really know what will happen if he pick up the salt? But he kind of knew that he'll be able to change the game. And that's creation of a new universe. And that's what we need to do in each of our organizations. And therefore, the biggest resource for leadership is basically you or us. When Hanuman was supposed to jump and reach Lanka, because of the curse he had, he forgot how to jump. All his powers were taken away. And Jambavan had to remind him. I'm sorry for some of the friends from outside who wouldn't know the mythological background to it. But Jambavan had to remind that you have all the gunas. You have all the gunas to jump, but you've forgotten. You've forgotten how to jump. You've forgotten how to reach the potential that you have been designed to reach. And once Hanuman got to understand the potential he has, he could jump. I think all of us have that potential. And in summary, if I can just quote from Iqbal, खुदी को बुलंद कर इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरा रजा क्या है. Just for my friends from outside, before every time God says what your destiny will be, God comes and asks you and takes your permission, tell me what you want your destiny to be. Because you've made yourself so strong that even God has to take your permission. I think that's what leadership is. That's what would help our organizations grow. That's what would help our country go. Thank you.